I'll tell you something though that is worth doing. I bet every single person that tries single baits, and like we were saying earlier, uses yellow. I mean, I've got sucked into the same thing. I've wrote about that in the article as well. That even though 20 odd years later from using singles, you think that you know a lot better. I was much more adventurous when I was younger with not only fishing, I guess, but anyway. No, what I'm saying is I used to be uncluttered in my mind. I'd go to a place and I'd make blue baits up, you know, like turquoise or fluorescent green. And now you'd think, oh, I don't know if I want to put them on. But it's a weird sort of block in your mind. Whereas when I was younger, I didn't give a monkeys, you know, I'd try all sorts, and that's how I found out things that were really good. But like singles, nobody seems to use red. You get them all the other colours, but red ones, you never see anyone casting a red one, and that's worth trying.
Yeah, I caught all mine this spring actually on a real bright red. They outfished yellow, even on somewhere like Sandhurst, which is really prolific. I started off 3 rods, a couple on yellow, 1 red. I'd bite on the red one. Oh, I was curious. Put it back out. A couple of hours later, that went again. Swapped the rods over. Again, it was a red one that went. So in the end, like a couple of trips in, I ended up with all 3 on red. It outfished the yellow ones. Oh, Christ knows, 10-1 maybe, something like that.
I mean, me personally, I like an orange tutti frutti, so I mean, we all like different colours, don't we? But I found like a little 10mm, you know, sort of a little 10mm tutti frutti popped up just off the deck. I mean, it seems to work really well for me, like, you know, whereas yellow ones, I don't seem to catch that many on, to be honest.
I've been lucky enough, I haven't fished with Gareth, but I've been lucky enough to fish with both Martin and Frank. And Martin and mine fishing, well, but to be honest, all 3 of our fishing are completely different.
I've seen your rings.
Martin tends to use little tiny baits, and he likes little tiny hooks. The finesse, and well, I couldn't even imagine tying rigs. I mean, they're absolutely immaculate. Frank has, you know, he uses single baits, whereas my type of fishing tends to be shark hook, size 2, size 4, double 26mm baits, and even during the winter months. We caught a lot of fish on Welly a couple of years ago, all the way through the year, and I don't know how many of you do it, but about 3 or 4 years ago, I suddenly realised that I was doing what everybody else was doing and what all the magazines were asking us or telling us to do. Come the winter time, we were having to change what we were using as bait and how we were applying the bait, because all through the summer months we were using a certain bait, and then come the colder waters we were all having to change what we were doing, because the fish or the bait that we were using during the summer months wasn't producing the fish during the colder months. So about 3 or 4 years ago I decided that I would only use a bait that I could use and fish confidently for 12 months of the year. And basically that's all I've been doing. I pick one bait, I apply the bait what I hopefully is correctly into an area or areas where the fish will be, because you're not going to catch a fish or get a bite if you're putting a bait where the fish isn't. And I think that's going to be one of the most important things that you've got to realise. And I'm much the same as Frank. I still use a big hook during the winter months. I still use my 15, 20, 25 pound hook lengths during the winter months. I still use 4 or 5 ounce leads during the winter months. But I'm relying on the bait that I've applied for the 12 months of the year. I don't do a lot of float fishing, I don't do a lot of zig fishing, because the way I look at it now is, if I miss the opportunity in the summer months of applying bait to those fish, it could cost me bites in the winter months. And because I've fished 12 months of the year, I pick a bait. And it's going back to basically what Frank was saying about the nuts. And the baits I'm using at the moment are nut-based, peanuts and Brazil nuts and things like that. I've tried maggots this year, and I've tried maggots last year. Haven't had a carp on them. But I've had over 100 other fish this year on the boilie, but I haven't had a carp on the maggot. So it is all relevant to the water that you're fishing. If you're a summer angler, you know, use one bait. If you're going to fish 12 months of the year, you've really got to think about what sort of baits you're going to use. Pick a bait that you're able to apply and use it all year.
It's good though if you're intending on going back onto on the same lake. If you're fishing one lake in the summer and you're intending on fishing that through the winter, if you plan it right, you know you can keep them feeding all winter long, like, you know. But like I said earlier, like, you know, I sort of fish different lakes for summer and winter. You know, I tend to go on like more lunge waters in the winter, and you haven't really been down there through October and November time to get you the lake prime onto your bait. So you sort of like just sort of going on what you think's going to get you a quick bite, rather than like, you know, sort of introducing a food source.
I don't know about if you've got shark hooks on, but am I right in assuming that everybody else shortens their rigs down in winter because the fish don't move around so much?
Not really, to be honest. I tend to let the baiting scenario that I'm putting my rig over dictate how long my rig's going to be. If I'm fishing over buoy, say a spreader buoy or what have you, you know, I'm looking at getting the fish moving around. I use a slightly longer rig. If I'm putting a load of hemp, stuff like that out, like how I was fishing on the car park, I was using loads of hemp, little bits of nuts, things like that, and a few buoys, and then small spots. So you've got a big, heavy carpet of tiny baits. They're going to be feeding completely differently. And then, yeah, I did shorten my rigs down. I mean, I tend to use, you know, fairly kind of standard, really, sort of, I don't know, I guess like 6 to 10 inches. Really, it doesn't really vary too much outside that. I do muck around with the choddies and things like that, which obviously, you know, is essentially just a tiny, was no hook link essentially at all. You know, there's no length in it. But no, I mean, I don't really change anything for the winter. I just change it on the basis of the, you know, or like the lake bed as well. You know, if I'm fishing it on gravel, you know, it might be slightly short. If I'm fishing it into silt, something like that. But I mean, again, I don't really do that really because I use a helicopter, so I tend to let how far I set the stop back kind of dictate that.
The only difference that I make really to my rigs in the winter is, I mean, because I was using maggots, I use a fluorocarbon soft uplink with a combi link and that supernatural stuff, just because like the maggot's so light in the water and like act totally different to sort of like a boilie on the bottom. I think that, you know, you've got to make it look as natural as possible, and like I think that making up them combi links sort of get you a few extra bites. But I do keep the length reasonably the same, although in the winter with them maggots, I found that if you used a longer area, it seemed to work really well.
I can remember talking to, I had the pleasure of fishing with Rob Malin quite a lot a few years ago, and one of the questions he was asked when he was using the mag line was, "How long's your rig, Rob?" And he used to say, "That long." He never knew how long it was. All he used to know was he used to go, that was the length of the rig that he used. Personally, when I tie my own rig, my rig box has got a ruler, not a ruler, but it's got a measure on the actual top of the lid. And my rigs are 10.5 inches, and I use those for 12 months of the year, unless I'm using something like solid PVA bags or a chop rig, which is about 1% of my fishing. So
I think at the end of the day, I think if you're getting good hook holds, then you don't need to change anything. If you start losing fish and things like that, I mean, I always base, I mean, my rigs are pretty simple really, but you know, I land, I reckon 99%.